A few months ago, we made a video where we talked about the best thing about every Assassin's Creed game, the peak moments, and the stuff that makes us love this franchise. But today, we're choosing violence, because if there's a best, then there's always a worst. And no, this isn't one of those lazy videos. We're actually gonna break it down and explain why it's bad, what went wrong, and how it messes with the experience. So, let's begin. Starting from the very beginning, the game that started it all. We cannot really blame Ubisoft because it was their first attempt. Of course it had limitations, like limited missions, limited side content, and limited mechanics. Most of that is completely understandable because it was literally 2007. We didn't have technology we have today, so expectations have to be realistic. But if we really have to nitpick one worst thing, then undoubtedly it's parkour. Now don't get me wrong, mechanically it's super impressive. It actually feels realistic as you move step by step. And that's exactly the problem, because climbing even a simple building takes forever. You're literally going one ledge at a time as if Altair is scared of heights. It may look cool and immersive at first, but the moment guards start chasing you, it becomes a pain in the ass. For a better understanding, imagine the entire city guard is after you and you start climbing, thinking you're finally safe. But a rock hits you and you fall. But instead of running away, you start climbing again in desperation. Then, another rock hits your butt, and you fall again. And that's exactly when the realism stops being immersive and starts being annoying. Moving on to Assassin's Creed 2, or the best Assassin's Creed game for many fans, and to be honest, they're not wrong at all. Because everything was just beautiful. The story, the gameplay, the mechanics, and the soul-touching soundtrack. And most importantly, Ezio. It did so many things right that it almost felt perfect. But even this masterpiece has flaws, and the biggest one is the camera angle. I swear I never saw anyone mention this, but it was genuinely annoying. Like in open areas, there's no problem at all, but the moment you enter closed and linear spaces, especially the assassin tombs, the camera becomes fixed in this weird, painful angle. Normally, this wouldn't be a huge issue, except this is a parkour heavy game. The camera always gives you the worst possible cinematic angle at the worst possible time. Like what the f***? It's annoying as hell, especially in the tomb missions where we had a timer. Now, it would have been much better if the camera angle was adjustable, but it is what it is. Speaking of Brotherhood, and yes, it had the same camera issues as AC2, but let's be fair, they improved it a lot. But if we're really talking about the worst thing in Brotherhood, then it's the Master Assassin recruits. Yeah, 100% synchronization objectives exist, and they're painful, there's no doubt in that. But honestly, they're manageable. The recruits thing though, it's a whole different story. First of all, you have to level them up, and to do that, you have to send them on missions on different continents. And here's the fun part, those missions run in real time. So if a mission says 20 minutes, that's 20 real life minutes. And you have to repeat this process over and over for every single recruit until they're maxed out. Now, no, it's not that difficult or challenging, but it's painfully slow. Like you're playing Clash of Clans and it's basically the waiting game. But on the bright side, all that waiting actually rewards you, because once they're maxed out, you can call them into fights and they help you in combat. But if they die permanently, and they're gone forever. Now, to compensate for that, you have to start recruiting other random civilians and train them again, only for them to die again, which makes the game feel a bit grindy. We already talked about the first two games of the Ezio trilogy, so why would we skip Revelations? Revelations is basically Brotherhood, but with an older and wiser Ezio, a new city, and some fresh missions. Story-wise, the game was absolutely messy, but gameplay-wise, everything was beautiful, except the den defense mechanic. Now here's how it works. Basically, different districts are controlled by Templars and you have to eliminate the leader so the district can become yours. But the problem starts when your notoriety hits the maximum level. And this is when the Templars decide to take it back from you. And now you're forced into den defense, which is basically a tower defense minigame inside Assassin's Creed. Oh, and it reminds me of the gang turf wars in GTA San Andreas, where your turfs were always under attack. And those were some good old days, man. Good old days. But anyways, it isn't hard or intense, but it's just time consuming and it interrupts the flow of the game. Now the good news? You can actually stop it completely. To do that, you have to assign a master assassin to a den and that district becomes permanently protected. No more forced tower defense and no more interruptions. Which actually makes you wonder, why was this mechanic even forced on us in the first place? AC3 did a lot of things right and fixed several problems from the older games, added new mechanics, and heck, even expanded the world in ways we hadn't seen before. But of course, it also came with its own set of headaches, and there are plenty to choose from, such as the notoriety system, or the infinite enemy glitch, or the endless tunnels, and the list goes on. But personally, the worst thing in AC3 is the insane checklist you need to complete to get that juicy 100% completion. Sure, the usual stuff is there, like finish every mission 100%, collect every collectible, and all the classic grindy nonsense. But then there are the challenges. Oh boy, the challenges. One of them requires you to literally run across the entire map just to unfog it, and literally each and every corner, not just one region. Another one forces you to hunt and kill every single animal in every region, even if you already killed it before. It's overcomplicated and tedious as hell, and it turns what could be a fun open world adventure into a chore. The game itself isn't even that long, but to hit that 100%, you have to grind hard and have to triple check every single thing over and over again. In short, it's the kind of grind that makes you want to put down the controller and rethink your life choices. The fan favorite Black Flag, a true successor to Assassin's Creed 3, a game that gave us one of the most memorable AC experiences ever. Pirates, ships, naval battles, treasure hunting, it had it all. Sure, it had its flaws, and many fans complained about the excessive tailing missions in the base game, and to be very fair, they were actually annoying. But for us, the real culprit wasn't chasing targets, but the modern day segments. And let me tell you, they were painfully boring. Zero fun, zero immersion, and honestly they felt like Watch Dogs but in first person. All that excitement of plundering the Caribbean and brutally slaying the enemies is gone every time you switch back to the office. All you did in the modern day segments was move around slower than a dying grandma. Honestly, it's kind of a relief that, according to the leaks, these segments aren't making it into the remake. But only if we get one. Because let's be real, Ubisoft's situation isn't exactly looking great. Rogue was a shorter experience overall as it used the same mechanics as Black Flag, and this is why many consider it a light version of its predecessor. And if you have already guessed where this is going, yep, that's exactly what we consider its worst thing. Sure, there are other contenders like annoying missions, repetitive naval battles, but we'd be only repeating ourselves if we focused on those. The real problem is how short the game is, and more importantly, how it skipped one of the most crucial events in the story. We're talking about the burning of the Homestead records. The same event that's mentioned later in Unity by Pierre Belec. It happened a year or two after Rogue in 1763 when the Templars made a final push against the Assassins and burned their manor in Homestead. This event traumatized Belec, which shaped his extremist ideology later on. We were so close to witness it firsthand and it never happened. It was such a huge shame and disappointment because seeing it would have tied Rogue perfectly into the larger Assassin's Creed timeline. Man, it was a missed opportunity. Unity is considered by many as the best stealth game in the series. It actually raised the bar by a mile, and it was also packed with features fans still love even today. Including crowds, parkour, co-op missions, it was full of fun stuff. But it wasn't perfect. Gameplay-wise, it was absolutely smooth, satisfying, and fun. The problem, however, which most of you will definitely disagree with, is the writing of the game. The story was completely lackluster. Character development was extremely weak and their motivations were all messed up. The characters themselves seemed conflicted and lost as if they were only existing. And this is the point where Ubisoft went downhill because there was literally no payoff and no solid reason driving the plot forward. It felt like they tried to mash things together. The game was a mix of revenge, thriller, love drama, and it was like Ubisoft forcefully joined the elements together. Basically, the story is that Arnaud Dorian loses his father in his childhood, then his adopted father, then forgets about his original father, and casually starts simping for his stepsister Elise. Like, what the f, bro? It just doesn't land. In the process, they wasted the connected storyline they were building across AC3 and Rogue, which could have been a strong and cohesive arc. Ubisoft only focused on Unity's gameplay and completely messed up the story. Syndicate is a very underappreciated Assassin's Creed game. Even today, a lot of people haven't even played it. Is it because the game was bad? Not at all. It had a solid map, a clear roadmap, and a story that, well, not perfect, but actually made sense in tone. Now, you might be thinking, you just roasted Unity's story, why not Syndicate, you biased f***? Calm down and hear me out. Unity underdelivered on a story that promised big, whereas Syndicate didn't promise much and it just delivered what it set out to do. There's a difference. Now, coming to the worst thing about Syndicate, personally, it's the map design. The streets were just way too wide. This layout totally discouraged parkour and stealth, and most of the time you were in open conflict. And about 90% of the time, you're just using the grappling hook, which is fun on its own, but it doesn't feel like Assassin's Creed. The game ditched the stealth and sneaky approaches and applied open streets and straight up brawls. While that's fun for a bit, it just doesn't capture the essence of being an assassin. Origins is by far my personal favorite of the new generation Assassin's Creed games, as it had a beautiful story, memorable characters, and a world that truly felt alive. But since we were talking about the worst things, we cannot skip Origins. If we look at combat, it was solid and satisfying. Exploration was really fun because of the mysterious world, and the story was great as well. Only one thing remains, and that is parkour, which personally wasn't that good. Origins was the pioneer that introduced the one-button linear parkour system. All you had to do was press one button and Bayek would follow your instructions wherever you wanted. There were no limits, no barriers, and you could literally go anywhere. Also, the world wasn't really built for it. Buildings, ledges, and vertical spaces were designed with meaningful parkour in mind. Normally, the world and the climbing system balanced each other out, but if you remove one aspect, the whole thing feels empty. And this is exactly what happened in Origins. The parkour system was repetitive as the world didn't offer enough opportunities to make it dynamic. Other than that, it was perfect. Everything down to the last minute detail. Odyssey was a fantastic RPG game, but not exactly a great AC game. Almost every player says this, and they are not wrong. The game struggled to resonate with casual Assassin's Creed fans and even some of the older ones. So what's the worst thing about it? The sheer and unbelievable amount of side activities. Question marks are literally everywhere, and the map is filled with side quests. And the worst part, most of them weren't even that interesting. They were just repetitive tasks which rewarded you with small XP. I wish they had cut down the grind and focused on fewer but more creative side quests that actually mattered. And it would have made the game much better. But instead, we got a grind fest, or we can say a chore disguised as content. This is exactly why even the thought of replaying Odyssey causes headache. Sure, the DLCs tried to balance it out later, but it was too late. By then, most players had already moved on. Valhalla is the highest selling game in the series, which made sense because it was packed with amazing moments, and of course, a fair share of missteps. Most players complain about the gigantic map and the endless and tiresome things to do, just like in Odyssey. But for me personally, the worst part wasn't the size. It were the character arcs. There were about 5 or 6 main story arcs, but the rest of them barely played any meaningful role in the story. There's a final arc at the end, but honestly, it feels more like a reward for players who had the patience to slog through the entire game. If Ubisoft had connected these arcs in a more meaningful way, it would have made Eivor's journey feel more cohesive, more engaging, and way more memorable than it already is. Eivor's story was indeed well written, but the structure just wasn't strong enough to leave a lasting impression. There was a lot of potential, but it got wasted because Ubisoft did what it does best. When Mirage first came out, it got mixed responses. Some said that it felt like a Valhalla DLC, and honestly they were entirely wrong, while others called it a cash grab. But today, people have started praising it. Videos are popping out everywhere and fans are treating it like the best thing in the AC fandom in recent years. Maybe people started treating it better because Ubisoft actually fixed the issues that were present at launch. But one thing remains and will always remain the worst part of the game, and I'm talking about none other than combat. The combat of Mirage is literally the worst among any other game in the series. We have said it before and we will say it again, Mirage tried to mimic the Ezio trilogy but failed spectacularly. There's literally no flow, no momentum or weight in the combat. And most of the time it feels like Basim is just punching thin air. I get it that they focus more towards stealth, making combat the last resort, but at the very least it should have at least felt satisfying. But no, it was a complete disaster. Apart from that, the game is great. The story is average, the world feels alive, stealth and parkour are also solid. But the combat? Yeah, that's one thing that keeps Mirage from being perfect. Finally comes Shadows, the latest entry in the series. It's one of those games that's, well, not too great, but not bad either. It shines in some areas and struggles in others, because it is a perfect mix of positives and negatives. Aside from the usual issues we've already mentioned, like map size, bloat, weak story arcs, etc., the thing we consider the worst is the season lock system. Look, I get it. The changing of seasons and resources moving around your territory makes the game immersive and sounds cool in theory. But this is also where it becomes a problem. To gather the resources, you have to mark them across different locations like forts, castles, and whatever, fine. Then to actually get them to your hideout, you literally have to wait 40 or 30 real life freaking minutes. and only after the season changes will your resources finally arrive. This is a painfully long wait, especially because you need those resources and money to upgrade your hideout buildings. This is a system that was meant to feel immersive, but ends up being annoying. The slow and frustrating grind constantly interrupts the flow of the game. And with that being said, the video comes to an end. Now, we tried our best to pick the things which majority would resonate with, but if we missed anything, then make sure to let us know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, then give it a big thumbs up and also subscribe because we upload Assassin's Creed content on a regular basis. So, I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care and goodbye.